Nobody expected the knock on Mary Austin's door. It came just weeks after Freddie Mercury's funeral. A quiet, hesitant tap, the kind that carries bad news or deep secrets. When she opened the door, a solicitor stood there holding a single envelope stamped with Freddie's name. Inside it was a message that changed everything the world believed about him. Not about his music, not about his illness, but about his money. For decades, tabloids painted Freddie as extravagant, the king of excess, the man who burned through millions on champagne, parties, and silk coats. Fans said the same. He lived like royalty, they'd whisper. He must have died richer than a prince. But when Mary held that envelope and read the truth, she realized something almost nobody knew. Freddie Mercury, the legendary frontman of Queen, had spent, gifted, and quietly given away fortunes long before he died. Some of it went to friends, some went to family, some simply disappeared into donations he never claimed credit for. And what remained, the last pieces of his fortune, he left only to the people who had stood beside him when the world wasn't watching. This is the story of the money Freddie Mercury earned, the money he spent, and the money he gave away without ever asking for applause. A mystery hidden behind fame, loyalty, and one man's decision to care more about people than possessions. But that wasn't the whole story. Because what Mary discovered next revealed an entirely different side of Freddie Mercury, a side few ever knew existed. Freddie Mercury became rich faster than almost anyone in British rock history. Queen wasn't just a successful band, they were a global phenomenon. Stadium tours, platinum albums, massive royalties, and worldwide merchandising turned him into a multi-millionaire before he even hit 40. But the world misunderstood him. Tabloids saw only the surface. The champagne fountains, the lavish costumes, the 5-course dinners at midnight, the antiques, the 100,000 art pieces, the spontaneous holidays. They shaped an image. Freddie, the extravagant king of rock, burning cash like fuel. But behind the spotlight, his relationship with money was deeply emotional. He saw it as a tool, not to control others, not to accumulate power, but to create joy. He loved giving gifts more than receiving them. He loved surprising people, lifting them up, spoiling them just because he could. His assistant Peter Freestone once said, "Freddie cared about people. Things came and went. People didn't. Freddie spent, yes, but he spent on experiences, on laughter, on people he loved. He wasn't reckless, he was passionate. He wasn't careless, he was generous. Yet nobody knew how far that generosity truly went. Not yet. Because the real secret of Freddie's fortune would only emerge after he was gone, when the world discovered that money meant absolutely nothing to him compared to loyalty. And what he did with his wealth during his life shocked even those closest to him. Before he died, Freddie Mercury quietly gave away extraordinary amounts of money. And most of it never made headlines. Friends told stories of him sending cash to struggling musicians anonymously. He paid rent for people he barely knew. He funded hospital bills for friends of friends. He helped dancers, painters, costume designers, assistants, anyone whose creativity he admired or whose struggle touched him. He often slipped money into envelopes and had staff deliver them without any note attached. He didn't want thanks. He didn't want pictures or credit. He just wanted to help. Some stories even claim Freddie donated funds to AIDS centers during the height of the crisis, but insisted on anonymity so tabloids wouldn't twist his kindness into speculation about his health. He once told a close friend, "If I can help someone breathe easier even for a moment, that's worth more than buying another painting." He gifted his staff cars, jewelry, plane tickets, and holidays. He rescued friends from debt. He bought instruments for young artists who couldn't afford them. This wasn't charity for publicity. This was Freddie, the human being, the person who valued laughter, connection, and kindness far more than designer clothes. Yet even all of this was nothing compared to what he planned at the end. Because when his health declined and he rewrote his will, Freddie Mercury made the biggest financial decision of his life. And nobody, not even his bandmates, saw it coming. As Freddie's illness progressed, he became more private, but also more generous. The fewer public appearances he made, the more he quietly gave away. Peter Freestone, his longtime assistant, recalled moments when Freddie would see someone struggling, a young artist, a sick fan, a lonely neighbor, and without hesitation, send money anonymously. He once overheard a conversation about a friend of a friend who couldn't afford surgery. Freddie paused and said, "How much do they need?" That person later received full funding for the operation. but never knew where it came from. Stories circulated of Freddie visiting AIDS wards dressed down, avoiding attention, offering small gifts, personal conversations, even financial support, always through someone else, never directly. These weren't grand gestures, they were human ones. Quiet, humble acts that spoke of a man who understood pain deeply and didn't want others to suffer alone. And then there were the rumored large donations, money transferred quietly to organizations and clinics, funds sent to artist foundations, amounts written off as private gifts on accounting sheets. Freddie hated being seen as a saint, but he hated seeing people struggle even more. He once said, "I'm not a philanthropist. I just like to make people smile." But those smiles added up. And when Mary Austin opened his will, she would soon learn just how far that compassion went. Because Freddie's final act of generosity wasn't a donation, it was a legacy. In 1991, as Freddie's health rapidly declined, he made one of the most important decisions of his life. He rewrote his will. Lawyers expected a typical celebrity estate, large donations to charities, funds for the band, perhaps money for distant relatives. But Freddie surprised them all. He didn't care about institutions. He didn't trust charities with giant administrative budgets. He wasn't interested in building a monument with his name on it. What he cared about were people, real people. The ones who had held his hand, protected him, supported him, and loved him long before the fame and long after it. He told a lawyer calmly and firmly, "I want the people who cared for me to be taken care of when I'm gone." And that was that. Freddie left nothing open for negotiation. He knew exactly who deserved the pieces of his life, and exactly who didn't. His will wasn't about money. It was about gratitude. It was about loyalty. It was about showing in the only way he could that the truest wealth he had ever gained came from human connection. But nobody outside his inner circle knew how far this decision would go, until they opened the documents at Garden Lodge. And when they did, it stunned everyone in the room. After Freddie passed away on November 24, 1991, the will was opened. What happened in that room became one of the most emotional moments in Queen's history, though few outside the circle ever heard the details. Half of Freddie Mercury's entire fortune, including Garden Lodge, all its contents, and most of his future royalties, went to one person, Mary Austin. Not a spouse, not a business partner, not a member of the band, but Mary, the woman he once loved, the woman who stayed loyal to him through every rise and every fall. She gasped, she cried, she protested. Freddie had already anticipated this. He'd asked the lawyers to make it non-negotiable. He once said, "Mary is my common-law wife. Everything I have is hers." He meant it. The rest of his estate went to his family, ensuring they would never struggle financially again. And then came the greatest twist. The part of the will that stunned even Mary. Because what Freddie left to friends was far more generous than anyone expected. And what he left to staff, people the world barely knew by name, revealed the true size of Freddie Mercury's heart. Freddie's will contained gifts so generous that they shocked even the legal team. He left $500,000 to Joe Fannelli, his former partner, $500,000 to Jim Hutton, his last partner, $500,000 to Peter Freestone, his loyal assistant of 12 years, $100,000 to Terry Giddings, his driver and friend. These weren't symbolic gifts. These were life-changing amounts, the kind of money that allowed ordinary people to buy homes, start businesses, and build stable futures. Freddie could have left that money to charities for publicity. He could have left it to the band for unity. He could have kept it for future royalties, but he didn't. He chose loyalty, he chose love, he chose the people who stayed when others walked away. Roger Taylor later said, "Freddie had a very strong sense of who deserved things. He wasn't foolish about it." In a world obsessed with fame, Freddie Mercury did something rare. He lifted up the people who never stood under the spotlight. And yet, there were still unanswered questions. Millions that seemed to just vanish. Rumors began. Mysteries emerged. Fans asked, where did the rest go? And that's when the controversy began. Not long after Freddie's funeral, strange rumors started circulating. The tabloids couldn't believe that his fortune had been split so unusually, so personally. Where was the rest? Freddie had earned far more than $10 million across his career. So why did the numbers feel incomplete? Two main theories emerged. 1. Freddie donated huge amounts anonymously before he died. Friends hinted he transferred money quietly to AIDS support centers and charities, insisting on secrecy. With his privacy obsession, this theory made sense. 2. He spent enormous sums helping people privately. Rent, medical bills, gifts, loans he never asked to be repaid. All the quiet acts he never bragged about. There was also talk of large bank withdrawals in the final years of his life. Unexplained, unaccounted for. Were they donations? Gifts? Something more private? No one knows, not even Mary. And Freddie ensured it would stay that way. He once said, "The world doesn't need to know everything." One thing is certain, by the time he passed, Freddie Mercury cared far more about the comfort of others than about leaving behind piles of money. But the biggest mystery still remained. To this day, fans debate what happened to the millions Freddie earned. Some say he burned through it living fabulously, that's partly true. Some say he funneled money into private help for strangers, also plausible. Others insist he made anonymous donations so large they erased chunks of his fortune. But maybe the real explanation is simpler. Freddie Mercury lived fully. He spent generously. He loved recklessly. He helped quietly. He didn't save money, he used it. To create art, to create joy, to create comfort. And in the end, the only money he cared about was the money that took care of the people he loved. Which leads to his real legacy. A legacy that didn't die with him. After Freddie's death, his generosity didn't stop. It amplified. The Mercury Phoenix Trust, founded by Brian May, Roger Taylor, and Jim Beach, has since raised millions in his name to fight HIV/AIDS worldwide. Every tribute concert, every movie, every anniversary celebration, every streamed song, all of it continues his legacy of helping others. But Freddie never wanted the world to see him as a saint. He just wanted to make people laugh, to make them feel alive. And now, decades later, his kindness still changes lives. His voice still lifts people out of darkness. His generosity, both known and unknown, inspires millions. If Freddie's story moved you, if his loyalty, his heart, and his secret generosity touched you, help keep his spirit alive. Subscribe, like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice keeps his memory echoing across the world, just like his music still echoes through time. But there's one last chapter to the story, a chapter that reveals something far deeper than money. Freddie Mercury died with far less money than people expected, but he died richer than almost anyone who ever lived. Not in bank accounts, not in assets, not in investments, but in love, in loyalty, in the lives he changed. His greatest fortune was the people who adored him, and the people he cared for until the very end. Mary Austin, his family, his friends, his staff, his fans. He gave away his wealth not because he was careless, but because he understood something most of us never do. In the end, money disappears, but kindness remains. Forever. Freddie Mercury didn't leave behind a kingdom of gold. He left behind something far heavier, a legacy of generosity, love, and humanity that the world will never forget. And that is the greatest fortune of all.